Hello, I'm Elaine Sanchez, founder of Caregiver Help, and I'm here with Tim Rocak, and he is the former CEO of Garden Services in Salem, Oregon. And I have been to many of Tim's fundraisers where we talk about helping teenagers with developmental disabilities get their first jobs, and how job coaching and how they can really grow beyond our expectations, and how exciting it is for them, the individual, for their families, and for the organizations that benefit from their loyalty, their enthusiasm, and their energy. So, Tim, we're back. And
Hi.
we're going to be talking about the transition to adulthood and levels of independence. So I know this is something where you have a huge heart and a lot of experience. So let's talk about where the transition starts.
That's great. Thank you, Elaine. Um, so we've talked about IDEA a little bit, IDEA being the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it became IDEA in 1990. It had a different name before that. And so some of the rights were already in place, the right to a public education, a free public education. That actually started in 1975. But in subsequent years, after 1990, it became known as IDEA, and IDEA emphasized some other things, including transition. So a couple of the major changes that have happened in more recent years since 1990 are around starting younger. And so we talked about early intervention services being available from birth to 5 through the Individual Disability Education Act. But then the other part of it is around transition. And transition was emphasized in more recent years, and the law requires that by age 16, while your child is still in school, that they have a vocational plan in place to explore careers, work experiences, gain vocational skills, begin linkages with adult service providers. And so those linkages can be work-related, but there are also residential programs for individuals with disabilities who are leaving school and becoming adults. And so what the transition programs do, so now we've talked again about the IEP, that contract or plan for your individual that you and the professionals are working on together as your child goes through school. Well, by age 16, their IEP must contain a transition plan. So if you aren't seeing that when your child hits that age, start asking for it. It's required by law. And what that means is it's starting to be a shift from strictly academics to what will the focus be to help this person transition into adulthood. And not everybody follows an academic path, whether they have a disability or not. So that's the main change that you'll start to see is, okay, let's talk about what's after school and what are our plans to help your child make that.
So what are the options? Now, I know that Garden Services, where we live in Salem, Oregon, has a program, and you help these kids experience work and success. Where are these types of programs around the country, or what should you be looking for?
It's fairly unusual that an adult service provider, which is what Garden is, works with kids in transition age. I'm not saying Garden's the only one that does that, but if you think about it, the funding and the responsibility still is with the school. But where people like the adult service providers come in and where the emphasis starts to change is you're making those linkages now. So Garden offers a summer program of work experience for kids with disabilities, but we work with the school to do that. And so it's a summer program when the school isn't providing services, but we're working with the special ed teachers in the classrooms to help the children submit applications for that program,
Okay.
give us an idea of what their interests are. If nothing else, which kids want to work? Because
Mm-hmm.
not every kid is interested in pursuing work, especially at the age of 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really, what it is about is starting to figure that out. And then lining up the time that the child is spending in school with those expectations and those goals. So, you might see a little shift from academics, a little more hands on stuff, and it can be job tryouts, it can be visiting workplaces to see what kind. I mean, if you're 16 years old, you don't know much about the world of work. And if you have a cognitive disability, it's going to be even harder for you to picture what people are talking about. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a bias toward actual experiences and taking abstract concepts and giving examples and also choice training. You're 16 years old, you're starting to be looked at as somebody that's making decisions more for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the IEP, it'll be the family and the child together making these decisions, but you're starting to shift more of that responsibility toward the child. And the school is also shifting the activities. So you might see a program that has, more time in an academic setting, but 2 days a week, there's going to be some kind of outing geared toward exploring the world of work. The other thing that comes up then that you talked about is linkages with adult service providers.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, chances are your child's going to outlive you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you have to start thinking about the residential side of that as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so this might be the beginning of you starting to understand, okay, is it okay for my child not to live with me? And if so, what are the options and who provides that and how do I go about it? So it's really, it's about giving the child different experiences, but it's also for the family to start to understand where those resources are going to come from down the road and where does your child fit in with that.
So, talk to us about the residential options. When when people make the decision that okay, it's time for them to possibly move out and be in a residential, this would be like a foster home with other people who are similar, correct?
Yeah,
And how many people would be there, and what would it look like?
yeah. Again, what's available will vary widely
Mm-hmm.
across the country and even
Mm-hmm.
within the states sometimes. But you touched on a few of the options. There are adult foster homes.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think of foster homes, I think it's kind of a different picture. It's often one child or two children with a parent,
Mm-hmm.
maybe leading to adoption or on a path to adoption. In this case, we're talking about more of a care home situation, but in a family sort of setting. So it's
Yes.
not institutional, it's a house, and there may be in that house, 4 or 5 or 6 other individuals with disabilities that live there. You might have a roommate or you might have your own room. There'll be shared common space. And sometimes you would do activities as a house. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you would do activities as an individual. Um, Not as high on the scale of day-to-day instruction, but more kind of a family atmosphere. Moving from that, there are adult service providers that provide residential training. And again, it may be that your child needs more help than can be provided in a foster home setting, in which case you may have trained professionals in a group home that is run by a residential training program. And those programs can be statewide programs that can be just serving your community. They're usually private, not for profit organizations formed for that purpose.
When you say training, who's getting trained?
Paid staff.
Paid staff. So they are getting
Paid staff are
trained,
training individuals with disabilities.
okay, to do.
Cooking, menu planning, shopping,
Okay.
personal
Okay.
hygiene, pretty
Okay.
much activities of daily living that
Okay.
any of us need to be able to live independently. And
Okay.
it'll be geared toward the individual's need and level of support.
Mhm. Mhm.
Again, with an emphasis on minimal assistance. If the individual can do it for themselves, maybe you're just checking in with them.
Mhm.
But there may be individuals that need you to go with them and actively oversee and help them through the
Mhm.
decision process at the
Mhm.
grocery store. Uh, so there's all ranges. There are group homes that specialize in people with intensive support needs, in some cases, extreme medical support needs. I've worked with individuals who had seizure disorder and physical disabilities and cognitive disabilities to the extent that they couldn't speak, they were nonverbal, they could not handle their own bathroom needs, and they needed to be repositioned every 2 hours to avoid bed sores and things of that nature. Were in wheelchairs or on a bed all day long.
Yeah.
That's a pretty intensive support need, and it's
Yes.
going to take paid support
Yeah.
staff to help
Yeah.
them. But
Now,
that's services involved.
how is that paid for?
That is generally paid for through federal Medicaid funding
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
is funneled through the state and
Mhm.
ultimately through counties usually.
Mhm. Mhm. And at what age can children go into this kind of care?
It usually will happen. There's a few exceptions, but most of the services of that kind are for individuals age 21 and older.
Okay. But not for someone who's just graduated from high school.
Again, individuals with disabilities can leave high school at age 21,
Okay. Yeah.
which is one of the reasons that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't overlap. But
Mm-hmm.
they also can leave at age 18 as other children do.
Mm-hmm.
So there are
Mm-hmm.
programs that will accept children becoming adults, let's say, at age 18. However, if you have a 17-year-old or even an 18-year-old that's still in school, it's a good idea to start learning of those programs,
Mm-hmm.
maybe doing a visitation or a meeting with a staff person to learn more about what services are available. And on the residential side, I was going to talk about this in another section. We may touch on it again, but you can do trial visits. It can be as simple as an invitation to dinner at the group home one night,
Okay.
where your child is actually a guest and meets the people who live there, meets the staff who work there, gets to see the house and what the rooms are like. So they can start to picture this might be an option for you down the road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What has your experience been? I'm sure it's all over the board, with people who have visited these facilities or who have moved into them. How do they feel about those places?
For the most part, I found the family members to be more reluctant than the individuals with disabilities.
Yes, I was thinking that too.
And it makes sense. You're worried. It's out of your control. You don't know these
Mhm,
people. You don't know what it's
mhm,
going to be like. You spent your whole life learning about your child and how to help them, and how are these people going to know that? And the real fears, and some of them are valid, of course. And that's also why a trial visit is really good. Um, you get to learn about what's there and how it's going to go as well as your child does. And
mhm,
then you get to see how your child responds to that. The fastest way for a parent to become unconcerned, and I've seen parents that are not open to that option, but if you can get them to consider a trial visit, and then their son or daughter comes home excited and happy and
mhm.
talking about it or anxious to go back, that helps a lot.
Of course it does. So could you ever do that as a respite option? I'm thinking back, somebody, you have a child in high school, you need to you need to get away, or there's a family emergency or something like that, and you need care for them for a week or 2 weeks. Could you find a place like that where they could go?
Elaine, you're ready for the advanced class. Yeah, you sure could. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you might start off with a short visit, but
Yes.
eventually, especially as your child gets closer to the age where they may
Yes.
actually be looking at leaving home, often you're going to move toward overnight visits because it's a different experience. And
Yes.
being away from home overnight, maybe for the first time or the first time in that kind of situation, is scary to all parties usually. And
Mhm.
so, um, not only can you get an exploration and some more information out of that, maybe a good experience with your child, but yeah, it gives you a break too, and a
Yeah.
guilt-free break.
A guilt-free break. We want to emphasize that. Um, so for me, I think the hard thing is releasing your need to control and to be in charge of their life and their choices. Not easy with raising children to be adults, right? But have you ever counseled people on that? Do you have recommendations to help them release that attachment?
Well, I don't want them to release the attachment, but I want them to release the fear.
Yeah.
I think the place to start with that is sooner. Um,
Okay.
I've had parents ask, what can I do to help my child successfully transition
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
adulthood?
Mm-hmm.
And there's simple things that many parents are already doing, but they don't really even realize how helpful they're being. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it starts with things at home, how you expect things of your child. Do they have chores that they're expected to complete?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Give them responsibilities, help them practice making choices. Um, Include alternative communication methods if they're available to you. Ways to help your child be more independent leading up to that means it's less scary for the individual as well as the family when you get to that stage. And you're going to feel better equipped, and your family's going to feel better equipped, and you're going to be a little less anxious about it too. So I think as you start that road to independence in the safety of your own home, it's going
Mm-hmm.
to pay off for you down the road, and it'll make the child's path a lot easier as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sounds really logical and not always easy emotionally, but I think you're right. So what have we not covered here? Okay. So this is going to be the next conversation. What happens when school ends? So they're 21. They're out of high school. Hopefully, by this time, they've had some work experience through the programs. And now you're 21, you're out of school. What happens next? Do we save this conversation for our next one?
Well, I think we can tease it a little, at least
Okay,
start
let's go
down that
ahead.
road.
All right, let's do
Um,
it.
I think you should be educating yourself during the transition period about what resources are out there, what options, educating yourself as well as your child about what
Mm-hmm.
options might be available. Um, and again, I have to point out different states, counties, and communities will have different things available. So
Yes.
some will have more, some will have less. Just know that that's the way the world is, and you can ask for something, and it won't be there until you ask for it, right? So even
Okay.
if that service isn't existing in that area, as you start asking for it, you increase the likelihood that it'll be available for your family member down the road or for the other family down the road.
Okay.
Um, and also, the options that are available to you. If you have a really good school program and your child has progressed, um, I'd want my child leaving school with a resume.
Okay.
That's part of the transition. That's part of the requirement of exploring the world of work. Hopefully, if you haven't had a paid job, even part time for a few hours, you've had work experience. That can be part of a resume. So, as part of the IEP required transition plan, you're working toward a resume so that ideally, you're moving into a job after you leave school.
How
Um,
exciting is that?
yeah, schools have different ability to make that happen, though. So I've seen schools that help place children into jobs before they've left school, and they can work at
Wow.
a job and still be enrolled in school. And it could be one day a week. They're working on Fridays. They're working at the local movie theater or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a legal office for 3 hours a day, and that will be incorporated as part of their curriculum. And they're attending classes the rest of the time. Or it
Mm-hmm.
can move more toward 3 days a week, and they'll still get some support from school staff who might check on them in their job. That's a pretty advanced school district. Schools are moving toward that. The goal for schools in their transition plan is for somebody to leave with a job. But very often, because getting jobs is hard, as you know,
Right.
whether you have a disability or not, even though that's the goal, they may still be working toward job development as the person leaves school and enters the adult system. But
Mm-hmm.
the critical part of that is while they're still in school, they should be meeting with a vocational rehabilitation counselor who will enroll them so that they're eligible for training services through the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. It's called Voc Rehab or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
VRD often.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the avenues where they can provide short-term job development. Your son or daughter could have a job developer working on their behalf to help them find a job that matches with their interests and their abilities.
So, did you at Garton work closely with the school district then to help these kids come into the summer job program? Is that
Yeah.
how that worked?
Yes. And the nice thing about that program is some of those kids, when they leave school, would be our responsibility to provide services. And if they
Mm-hmm.
entered our program, we already have some familiarity with them.
Uh-huh.
In some cases, we've seen them in the workplace, but also they already understand some things about the world of work. And they
Mm-hmm.
have some experiences. They've had to discipline themselves. They've had to get up at 7 in the morning
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on a Saturday to go and work a Saturday job,
Mm-hmm.
or they've had to decide that I guess I can't really go to Disneyland this summer if I'm going to earn money for college.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those experiences are valuable before they leave school. But ideally, at that point, they're working with somebody, and we've all networked through that IEP.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the Voc Rehab counselor would then be working with Garton, probably would hire Garton as a private, not for profit to support that person's movement into a job.
Well, that's awesome. I never knew exactly how that worked. So that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
glad
really
I could
good.
help.
All
Um,
right. Well,
I
this
just
is
want to add that there's also, again, we're talking about disability as though it's one thing. Disability is really a
mhm,
broad topic, and there's
mhm,
all levels of ability and disability. But there's also college. Um, Community colleges in particular have some responsibility to provide support for students with disabilities, and
mm,
will almost always have a disability office in a college. And it can be formal accommodations for academic success. In some cases, it might be even to the point of test taking in a different setting or
okay.
using different media, different ways of communicating. So I know kids with pretty significant disabilities that do go on to college, and in some cases earn an associate degree or gain skill that helps them get to a job. So
That's
it's not
wonderful.
just necessarily specialized programs for people with disabilities. There are employment programs, there's residential programs, there's training programs, but there's also the programs that everybody else can access, and you and your child are free to access those too.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's good to know, Tim. So I think that my head is spinning a little bit. Those are, I think it's wonderful and it's hopeful. If I had a child with a developmental disability and I could see that there are programs that could help them find a job that would give them a sense of independence and accomplishment and their own money, I think that's a very hopeful and exciting outcome. Not only for the young person, but for the family, to think that they won't have to take care of all of their needs forever, that they're going to be able to take care of themselves.
Yes. I'll wrap this section up by telling you of a young man that I met. I did a presentation on disability awareness with him, and he was a 19-year-old nonverbal autistic. And I refer to him that way because he told me that's the way he wanted to be referred to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Long flowing hair, normal teenage kid. He couldn't speak. He had some autistic like traits, I guess is the way to say it, that we would expect to see in somebody with autism. He had an assistive communication device that he learned to operate, and it opened his world to him. He still can't speak, but boy, does he have a lot to say. And he was attending community college when I met him, and was writing poetry and being published. And up until then, he was treated as somebody that really didn't know what was going on around him. And boy, were they wrong. That young man knows a lot about what's going on around him, and he was able to tell us what he wished people had done differently to help him.
How did that crack open? How did you find out what was inside of him? What was that
worked with
transition?
him with a couple of forms of augmentative communication, which is one of the specialized services that you can get through a speech communication expert through your school district.
Okay.
And for him, there were two tools that he used. One was a keyboard computer that had synthesized voice. So he could type and have the computer speak for him.
Okay.
And that's a little slow for conversation. So that was a method for, for him to type papers. And if he wanted to prepare a speech in advance and have it be spoken, he could do it that way. He also had a communication board that he used that he had an assistant that would help him use this board. And basically he would point to the letters or the words, and they would speak them for him. And so it just opened the whole world of communication.
I bet it did. I can't imagine having the cognitive ability and having all of these thoughts and feelings and emotions, and having people look at me like I'm a coaster or something, that you don't have anything. And it's like, wow, he must, what a gift to be set free.
Yes, it does. It gives me goosebumps, and I wish you could meet him. He's really he really lights you up. I mean, he is his own person. His mom was his communications aide.
Okay.
And when she was helping with the presentation, and he was very clear that I not introduce her as his mom. That is my communication facilitation assistant.
Love
so he's
it.
developed his own identity, his own wants, his own personality, his own way of being, and he's very clear about that. And that comes from him being able to talk about what he wants and needs, and people listening to him when he does. So I wanted to end with that story.
I love that. Yeah. Being able to communicate and for people to listen. That's really great, Tim. Thank you. So that wraps up. This is our fifth session on this was the transition to adulthood and levels of independence. And that is kind of a mind spinning, I don't know what I want to say, spinning change and progression. And it's very exciting to think that that's what can happen, that that people can find out who they are, and then they can communicate, and then they can find a place in the world that is that fits them, where they can live an authentic life and feel fulfilled. And that's what all of us want for our kids, is it not?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So thank you, Tim. And we will have resources in the comments, in the description of this video. And I can't wait for us to record. The next one is based on planning for and with your adult child. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Elaine.